Hey guys, Arjun here. Today's video we're going to be going over dictionaries, so let's get right into it. Okay, the first thing we need to understand is what is a dictionary? A dictionary is basically a way to store key value pairs. What are key value pairs, you might ask? Well, example is you have a key. Let's say it's the number 1, and the number 1 has a value. Let's say it's apple. So how do we store those two together? That's when we use dictionaries. So, let me show you guys how to create an actual dictionary. To start, we need the name of our dictionary. You can make this whatever you want it to be, except try to make it something that matches what your dictionary is going to be about. So, I'm going to say mine is fruits. Now, we're going to use an equal to sign. And to create a dictionary, we're going to use curly brackets. Okay? Now, we learned that a dictionary is a key value method to store objects. So, first we need our key. I'm, for example, going to put 1. And to store this key 1 to a value, we just have to put a colon and then its value. Let's say apple. Now, let's say we wanted to store another key and another value. Put a comma to separate it, and now store your new key and new value. Finally, finish the dictionary by closing it off with another curly brackets. Now, if I print fruits, you can see that it prints the entire dictionary. An important thing to remember is that a dictionary key doesn't have to be a number. For example, let's say I wanted some information about a person. Let's say I say information is equal to, and then let's say the key is going to be name, and we can store this key to a name called John. This also goes vice versa. I can say age and store this to an integer, let's say 10. Now, if I print this, you can see that it will print the dictionary. Let's say I wanted to print a specific value of a key. So, how do we do this? Well, first, of course, we need our print statement. Then, I'm going to write the dictionary name, information. And then, using the square brackets, we're going to write the key. Let's say we wanted the name. So I will write name in quotes because this is a string. Then close it, and you can see that the value is printed, John. What if we wanted to add a key and a value to our dictionary? Well, it's pretty simple to do this. All we have to do is get the dictionary name. Let's say information. And then we're going to put square brackets, the same thing that we use for a list. Now, put the key value. Let's say I want it to be height. Okay? Now, I will store this, close it, press equal to, and then I'm going to store the value. Let's say 5 feet. Then, if I print information, you can see that height is appended to the end of the dictionary. Now let's say we wanted to delete something from the dictionary. This is also pretty simple. All we have to do is write del, which stands for delete, the name of the list, which is information, use the square brackets, and put the key that you want to delete. So let's say we want to delete the age. Now, if we close this, it'll delete it. And if we print this, you can see that the age, the key that we wrote in here, is deleted along with its value. Okay, now let's say we wanted to replace an item from the list. Let's say we wanted the height to actually be 6 feet. How do we do this? All we have to do is write the dictionary name, which is information, write the key, which is height, and we're going to store it with its new value, which we wanted it to be 6 feet. So now, when I print information, you can see that the new value of this key is 6. All right, now that we got the basics of dictionaries completed, let's do one last question to end this video. What I want you to do is make a quiz game with a total of 5 questions, let's say. And I want you to write a program that asks these questions one by one from the dictionary of the questions. For each question, you have to take an answer from the user using the input. So, after you get the input, you have to tell if the answer is right or wrong. And then you say the correct answer. At the end, once they are done answering all the questions, you're going to print the score out of 10. Can you try doing this? All right. I hoped you paused the video and tried to do this question by yourself, but now I'm going to quickly run through this question with you. So, let's first start by creating our dictionary of questions. I'm going to call my dictionary questions, just to make it easy. Then we put an equal to sign in curly brackets, and now let's actually create some questions. Let's say the first question is, what is the capital of California? Okay, now I'm going to put a question mark and I will leave a space. You will see why later. And then I'm going to store this key. The question is the key to now a value, which is going to be our answer. So the capital of California is Sacramento. Okay, great. Now let's do another question. Let's say, how many bones are in the human body? And then I'm going to store this as a string because when I'm asking for the user input, the input that we get from the user will be stored as a string. So when I compare the input to the value, which is 206, it'll show that they don't match because they're two different data types. That is why both of them need to be the same data type. So I'm just going to make the value a string. You will understand this later when we actually create the code to figure out if our user input matches the dictionary value. Now, for our final third question, I'm going to write, what planet is the closest to the sun? And I forgot to put a question mark here and a space so that when we ask the user input, they will show a space. Now, let's put the value, which is going to be Mercury. Okay, now let's close this off. All right, now let's start some actual coding. The first thing we need to do is create a variable that can store the score. What will we call this? We'll just call it score. And we'll set it to obviously have a value of 0 because that's the score that the user will start off with. Now, how do we go through every single question in the dictionary? Well, we can use a for loop. However, instead of using the regular syntax for I in range and then a number, we can actually use a variable to go through the dictionary. Let me show you how this is done. So let's create a variable. We're going to call it key. And I'm going to say for key in questions. What this basically does is key will iterate through every single key, this key, in the questions dictionary. So let's say I put print key. You can see that when I run this, it prints every single key in the dictionary. All right, so now what we need to do is ask all the questions. And we're going to do this with inputs from the user. So each input I'm going to store in the variable called A. So A is equal to input. And now we actually need to ask our questions. But we need something that can go through all the keys in our dictionary. You see this question here, what is the capital of California? And then it needs to ask the question, how many bones are in the human body, etc. So how do we get something that goes through every single key in the dictionary? Well, that is what this variable here is for. You can see for key in questions. This key variable goes through all the keys in the questions. In other words, key is equal to the questions. So all we have to do is write A is equal to input key. Now, if you see, when I run this, it'll go through all the questions. So like, let me just put some letters here. You can see that it is printing and asking an input of every single question in the list. All right. So the next thing we need to do is create the code to tell us if the user input is correct or not. So how are we going to check if the input is matching the value in our dictionaries? Well, I just said it in the sentence right there. We're going to use the if loop. So what are we checking? If this input here matches this value here. So what did I just say? If the input A matches equal to the value. How are we going to get the value? Well, if you remember, all we have to do is write the dictionary name, square brackets, and then we need the key. How do we get the key? Well, that's this variable right here. So we write key. So now this says, oops, now this says if this input is equal to the value, what are we going to do? Well, this means that they are correct. So we need to print correct. Also, what do we do? Well, their score needs to increase, right? So we will write score is equal to score plus 1. Now, what do we do if they're wrong? Well, we need to print that they are wrong. So we can, instead of writing if A is not equal to question key, we can just write else and then print wrong. Okay. The final thing that we need to do is print the score. How do we do this? Well, we'll exit the loop. What I mean is we'll go back to the regular indentation and we're just going to print your score is, and then we're going to write the score. So your score is, let's say, 1, and then we have to put out of 3 because there are 3 questions. So I'll close this, and when I run this, you will see that this starts off by asking the capital of California. So this is our first question. I'm going to write Sacramento. Okay, that says correct. Now we need to write how many bones are in the human body. Let's say we put 200. Okay, that's wrong. And what planet is closest to the sun? I'm just going to write Earth. And you can see that's also wrong. And our score is 1 out of 3. So that is the end to this question and the end to this video. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.